If humans are the galaxy's greatest example of restraint, Ambassador Thalek sneered, his sharp reptilian features twisting with disdain, then we are truly doomed. The words hung in the air of the Galactic Council chamber, a sprawling dome of shimmering crystal and pulsating lights. Delegates from over 50 species sat in their floating pods, murmuring amongst themselves, their voices a cacophony of clicks, hums, and guttural growls. At the center, a lone human ambassador, Sarah Lynn, stood unwavering, her expression a mask of calm professionalism. "We prefer diplomacy over war," Sarah said evenly, her voice amplified across the chamber. "That does not make us weak, Ambassador Thalek. It makes us wise." The crowd's murmurs swelled, a mix of approval and skepticism rippling through the chamber. Humanity had been a member of the Galactic Council for just under a decade, its reputation carefully crafted as a peaceful, cooperative species. Humans were seen as negotiators, mediators, reliable allies but never warriors. It was an image Sarah had worked hard to maintain, even as whispers of distrust lingered in the darker corners of the council. Thalek, representing the Kaoanan Dominion, leaned forward in his pod, his slit-pupiled eyes narrowing. "Wisdom is meaningless without strength to enforce it. Your kind has grown comfortable under the Council's protection, hiding behind treaties and trade agreements. But in this galaxy, power speaks louder than words." Sarah clasped her hands behind her back, her calm demeanor unshaken. "Power without restraint leads to chaos. Restraint, Ambassador, is the foundation of civilization. But perhaps that's a lesson the Kaoanan have yet to learn." A ripple of tension coursed through the chamber. Thalek hissed, his claws curling over the edge of his pod, but before he could retort, the council's presiding chair, a towering being of translucent energy known as Varys, intervened. "Enough," Varys intoned, its voice resonating like the toll of a distant bell. "This council exists to maintain peace, not to indulge in petty rivalries. Ambassador Thalek, your concerns are noted. Ambassador Lynn, humanity's record of diplomacy speaks for itself. Let us move forward." The tension eased, but Sarah could feel the weight of Thalek's glare even as the discussion shifted to trade routes and border disputes. She knew the Kaoanan Dominion's disdain for humanity ran deep, fueled by their hunger for conquest and their belief in dominance through strength. It was only a matter of time before they acted on it. As the session adjourned, Sarah made her way to her quarters within the council's orbiting station. The corridors hummed with activity, delegates and staff bustling about, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The warning she'd received 2 days earlier echoed in her mind. "They see you as prey. They will strike soon." It had come from an anonymous source, encoded in a secure message routed through layers of encryption. She'd shared it with Earth's leadership, who assured her they were monitoring the situation. But assurances meant little when she knew how fragile the Council's peace truly was. As she entered her quarters, her communicator chimed. She glanced at the screen and froze. The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. "Prepare. The mask of peace is about to shatter." Sarah stared at the words, her pulse quickening. The Kaoanan weren't just posturing, they were planning something. And humanity's greatest test of restraint might soon become its greatest battle for survival. The stillness of humanity's outermost colony, Hadron 7, shattered in an instant. Without warning, the blackness of space was lit by streaking plasma bolts, cutting through the station's orbital defenses like a blade through silk. Alarms blared as engineers and scientists scrambled for shelter, their panicked cries drowned by the deafening rumble of explosions. On the ground below, the colony's inhabitants stared skyward, watching in stunned horror as debris rained down from the once pristine orbital platform. Communication systems crackled and failed as a fleet of Kaoanan warships emerged from the void, their sleek, angular hulls reflecting the chaos they had unleashed. In the Council's central chamber, Ambassador Sarah Lynn watched the footage in grim silence. The emergency broadcast had interrupted a routine session, flooding the chamber with the sounds and sights of humanity's first unprovoked attack in centuries. Gasps of shock rippled through the gathered delegates, but not from everyone. Ambassador Thalek, his scaly features alight with thinly veiled satisfaction, leaned back in his pod. "It appears your precious restraint has earned you nothing but vulnerability," he said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. Sarah ignored the taunt. Her mind was already racing, weighing options and contingencies. She had warned Earth's leadership to prepare, but the Kaoanan's audacity exceeded even her expectations. This was no border skirmish. It was a declaration of war. "Presiding chair," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the growing din, "this attack on Hadron 7 is a violation of the Galactic Accord and an affront to everything this council stands for. Humanity demands immediate action. Varys, the presiding chair, pulsed faintly as it deliberated. We must confirm the facts before proceeding. Hasty decisions? How much more evidence do you need? Sarah interrupted, her composure giving way to controlled fury. You're watching the destruction unfold in real time. If the council fails to act, humanity will respond on its own. The chamber erupted into chaos, delegates shouting over one another. Some argued for a swift condemnation of the Kaoanin, others hesitated, wary of escalating the conflict further. Thalek, for his part, simply smiled. Hours later, Sarah sat in the quiet of her quarters, reviewing the preliminary reports from Hadron 7. Casualty estimates were in the thousands. The colony's orbital infrastructure was obliterated, and the surviving civilians were stranded on a planet with limited resources. It was a calculated blow designed to humiliate and isolate humanity. Her communicator buzzed, pulling her from the grim reports. It was a direct line from Earth's Defense Command. Ambassador Lin, the voice said, steady but tense. The Council's response is predictably slow. The President has authorized immediate deployment of contingency measures. We're preparing a fleet? Sarah exhaled, a mix of relief and dread. Do they understand what this means? Once we escalate, there's no going back. They understand, the voice replied. And so do you? She nodded, ending the call. The mask humanity had worn for so long, of restraint, of peace, was slipping. But if the KONN thought their attack would go unanswered, they had gravely miscalculated. As Sarah stared out at the stars, a grim resolve settled over her. The galaxy had mistaken humanity's patience for weakness. Now they would see the strength that lay beneath it. And for the first time in decades, humanity prepared for war. The delegation aboard the Vortha convened in the observation chamber, a sterile, dimly lit room dominated by glowing data streams. Every member of the Xenoth team grappled with the same question. What made humans willingly embrace such dangerous behavior? Their survival instincts, it seemed, were fundamentally different from those of every other species in the galaxy. Commander Threxiel's voice broke the tense silence. We need to understand their mindset, not just their actions. Until we do, we'll continue to misinterpret their behavior. Analysis Officer Fellner's 6 eyes flicked between overlapping holographic charts of human activity. Preliminary data suggests they evolved under constant threat. Predators, natural disasters, even their own planetary conditions. It's all chaos. Threxiel tilted his antennae toward the room's display, which showed a montage of human feats. Astronauts repairing equipment in the vacuum of space, miners extracting resources from volatile environments, and thrill-seekers diving into deep seas teeming with predatory life. Yet they don't just survive this chaos. They thrive in it. Why? The answer wasn't in their technology or physiology, it lay in their minds. The delegation resolved to dig deeper, analyzing human psychology through cultural archives, behavior patterns, and direct observation. What they found was equal parts fascinating and unsettling. Humans, they discovered, had a concept they called calculated risk. It was a philosophy born of necessity on a planet that punished hesitation as harshly as recklessness. Unlike the Xenoth, who relied on immutable protocols to guide their decisions, humans weighed danger against potential reward in real time. They trusted their instincts as much as their intellect, a trait honed through countless generations of survival against impossible odds. Consider their historical records, Fellner began, pulling up a visual timeline. Their most celebrated figures, explorers, inventors, warriors, achieved greatness by defying caution. They don't fear failure the way we do. They see it as a step toward success. This trait was most apparent in how humans approach collaboration. The delegation observed teams working in perfect harmony under pressure, communicating through subtle gestures and unspoken cues. When things went wrong, they adapted. When systems failed, they improvised. Their collective trust in one another was a force multiplier, amplifying their ability to overcome challenges. They rely on what they call intuition, Fellner continued, his voice tinged with disbelief. It's an amalgamation of experience, observation, and gut feeling. To us, it's imprecise. To them, it's a tool as reliable as any algorithm. Threxiel leaned closer to the display, watching footage of a rescue team braving a collapsing structure. Debris rained down as the humans guided survivors to safety. Despite the chaos, their movements were purposeful, their choices decisive. Each action seemed reckless, but every outcome proved calculated. What's more remarkable, Threxiel said, is that they willingly put themselves in harm's way, not just for personal gain but for others. Self-preservation isn't their sole motivator. This realization shook the delegation. In the collective, risk was avoided at all costs, even if it meant abandoning those in danger. To humans, however, risk was a necessary part of progress and survival, both for individuals and their communities. The delegation attempted to simulate Earth-like conditions aboard the Vortha to test their own adaptability. They increased environmental instability, introduced random variables, and attempted to respond as humans might. It was a failure. The Xenoths simply weren't wired for the same level of improvisation. Every simulation ended with a critical error, underscoring the vast psychological divide between the species. Their experiments were interrupted by a distress signal from the planet. A volcanic eruption threatened a nearby human settlement. The delegation watched in awe as Earth's inhabitants mobilized with astonishing speed, coordinating efforts to evacuate civilians and mitigate damage. "What are they doing?" Fellner asked, incredulous. "The risks are too great." "They're doing what they always do," Threxio replied. "They're turning danger into opportunity." As the delegation monitored the unfolding crisis, the humans' actions provided an answer to the question that had plagued them. Humans thrived not despite their disregard for safety protocols but because of it. Their willingness to face danger head-on, to adapt and endure, wasn't just a survival strategy. It was their defining strength. For the Xenoth, it was a lesson that would challenge everything they believed about progress. The KONN Dominion fleet loomed over Hadron 7, their ships exuding a menacing aura of inevitability. In the black void of space, the KONN commanders watched with satisfaction as the humans' orbital defenses lay in ruins. They anticipated an easy victory. But then, from the darkness beyond the colony's orbit, a lone human warship emerged. Sleek and angular, the Valiant looked like an insect compared to the hulking KONN dreadnoughts. It glided into view with eerie precision, its hull reflecting the faint glow of Hadron 7's atmosphere. On board the KONN flagship, Commander Vorik sneered at the audacity of the lone vessel. "One ship," he growled, his claws drumming against the armrest of his command throne. "Are they surrendering already, or is this their idea of a joke?" "Commander," a KONN officer interrupted, her voice uneasy. "That ship doesn't match the profiles in the Council registry. It's unclassified." "Unclassified?" Vorik's snarl deepened. "Destroy it?" The KONN fleet opened fire, plasma cannons lighting up the void as the first barrage streaked toward the Valiant. But to their astonishment, the ship moved with impossible speed and agility, its experimental quantum drives allowing it to evade the attack with effortless grace. Aboard the Valiant, Captain Maya Voss watched the incoming barrage on her tactical display. Her crew worked with calm precision, their movements a testament to the rigorous training that had prepared them for this moment. "Shields holding," her first officer reported. "They're recalibrating their targeting systems." "Let them try," Maya said, her voice steady. "Activate the disruption field. Let's see how they like fighting blind." The Valiant emitted a burst of electromagnetic energy, enveloping the surrounding area in a shimmering field. Instantly, the KONN's targeting systems flickered and failed, their advanced sensors reduced to useless static. "Commander." The KONN officer's voice was now tinged with panic. "We've lost visual lock on the target." Vorik slammed his fist against the console. "Fire blindly if you must. Destroy that ship." But the Valiant was already moving, slipping through the fleet like a ghost. Its advanced railguns fired with pinpoint accuracy, disabling critical systems on one KONN ship after another. Explosions rippled across the fleet as engines sputtered and weapons fell silent. On the Council's secure communications network, real-time footage of the battle began streaming in. Delegates watched in stunned silence as the Valiant systematically dismantled the KONN fleet. This is impossible," muttered one delegate from the Xeran Alliance, her many eyes blinking in disbelief. "The humans were supposed to be pacifists. They were supposed to be weak," said another, his tone both fearful and awed. In the center of the chamber, Thalek sat frozen, his reptilian features contorted in disbelief. The confidence he had exuded only hours before was gone, replaced by a flicker of doubt. At that moment, Sarah Lynn stepped forward, her gaze sweeping the room. "You underestimated us," she said, her voice carrying a weight that silenced the murmurs. "You believed our restraint was weakness. That was your mistake. And now the KONN will learn the cost of that mistake." Back in orbit around Hadron 7, the Valiant fired its final salvo, leaving the KONN fleet in disarray. As the surviving KONN ships retreated, Captain Voss gave the order to stand down. "Message to the KONN Dominion," she said, her voice cold and resolute. This was a warning. Do not make us show you what comes next. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's reveal. Restraint was over. The storm had begun. The Kaoanan Dominion's War Council convened in the shadow of their crushing defeat at Hadron 7. Anger and humiliation radiated from Commander Vorik, his claws digging into the war table as he growled, "One ship. One human ship humiliated our fleet. Explain to me how this is possible." The officers around him exchanged uneasy glances. Their technology was advanced, one finally admitted, far beyond what the Council's registry suggested. We were unprepared for such precision and tactics. Vorik slammed a fist on the table, scattering holographic projections of the battle. Unprepared? Humanity should have been the weakest link in the Council. Their so-called restraint has masked their true capabilities. They must be dealt with, permanently. Unbeknownst to Vorik, humanity was already 2 steps ahead. In the depths of Earth's military command, General Adrian Kane stood before a massive display screen, detailing the Kaoanan fleet's retreat patterns and reinforcement routes. Around him, strategists and officers worked tirelessly, their focus unshaken. "We have them cornered," Kane said, his voice cutting through the room. "The Kaoanan Dominion operates on intimidation and brute force, but they're vulnerable to precision strikes. Our next move must leave no doubt. Humanity will no longer tolerate aggression." Commander Elena Torres stepped forward, her expression sharp. "The Valkyrie fleet is ready, sir. Intelligence suggests the Kaoanan are regrouping at their staging ground in the Draymar system. A direct assault could cripple their war effort." Kane nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We strike at Draymar and we send a message to the galaxy. Humanity will not be underestimated again." Far from Earth, in the void of space, the Valkyrie fleet assembled. Sleek, black warships shimmered against the starlight, their hulls reflecting no markings or insignias. They were a force built in secrecy, honed for moments like this. Aboard the flagship Resolute, Captain Maya Voss stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the tactical readout. "Fleet is in position," her first officer reported. "Kaoanan forces are concentrated near the primary orbital station. Defenses are formidable, but they're not expecting us." Voss allowed herself a small, grim smile. "Let's ensure they never forget this day." Commenced the assault. The Valkyrie fleet surged forward, their quantum drives propelling them through the Kaoanan's outer defenses before alarms could sound. Advanced targeting systems pinpointed critical installations, and coordinated railgun strikes dismantled orbital platforms with surgical precision. Kaoanan warships scrambled to respond, but humanity's ships moved too quickly, their cloaking systems and disruption fields rendering the enemy blind. The Resolute unleashed a barrage of high-yield torpedoes, detonating the Dominion's primary command center in a fiery explosion that lit up the system. On the surface of Draymar, the Kaoanan High Command watched in disbelief as their mighty defenses crumbled. One by one, their fleets fell into disarray, their losses mounting with every passing second. "We have to retreat," one officer shouted, panic gripping his voice. "No," Vorik snarled. "We cannot show weakness." An incoming transmission interrupted him, and the image of Captain Voss filled the screen. Her tone was ice-cold. "You attacked our colonies, slaughtered our civilians, and believed we would cower. Let this be your only warning. Cross humanity again and there will be no retreat, no negotiations. We will end you." Before Vorik could respond, the transmission cut, and a final wave of human torpedoes rained down, obliterating the Kaoanan's remaining forces. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. Delegates spoke in hushed tones, their once dismissive attitudes toward humanity replaced by a mix of awe and fear. "Humanity has declared themselves a force to be reckoned with," one delegate murmured. "The galaxy will never be the same." And in the quiet of space, the Valkyrie fleet disappeared as swiftly as it had come, leaving only the echoes of their victory. The Galactic Council chamber was a storm of chaos and debate, the air charged with the tension of an impending decision. Delegates from across the galaxy argued, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear, anger, and uncertainty. At the center of it all stood Sarah Lynn, humanity's ambassador, calm but resolute. "The Kaoanan Dominion has violated every tenet of the Galactic Accord," Sarah began, her voice cutting through the din. "They launched an unprovoked attack on Hadron 7, slaughtering civilians and destabilizing the peace this council claims to uphold. Humanity's response was not just justified, it was necessary. And yet," hissed a delegate from the Vor Collective, "your response was excessive. You crippled an entire fleet and destroyed a strategic command center. How is that restraint?" Sarah met the delegate's gaze with steely calm. Restraint isn't passivity. Restraint is knowing you have the power to destroy, yet choosing precision. Every target was military. Every action calculated to end the threat. The KONN forced our hand, and we acted to protect our people and this galaxy from further aggression. Thalek, the KONN ambassador, rose from his pod, his scales gleaming under the chamber's crystalline light. Protecting the galaxy? You mean asserting your dominance. Humanity's sudden show of force is nothing short of a declaration of supremacy. You seek to replace us as the galaxy's ruling power. The chamber erupted in murmurs, the fear in the delegates' voices palpable. Sarah let the noise continue for a moment before raising her hand. We do not seek dominion, she said firmly. Humanity has no interest in ruling this galaxy. But make no mistake, if anyone threatens our people again, they will face the full weight of our resolve. The presiding chair, Varys, pulsed faintly, its translucent form shifting as it addressed the room. The council must decide how to proceed. The KONN Dominion's actions cannot go unanswered, but neither can humanity's sudden display of military strength be ignored. This is a moment that will define the future of the council and the galaxy. The voting process began, each delegate casting their decision on whether to censure the KONN, humanity, or both. The chamber held its breath as the results were tallied. The KONN Dominion, Varys intoned, is hereby stripped of its council privileges and sanctioned for its violations of the Galactic Accord. Reparations will be made to humanity and all affected parties. Thalek roared in fury, his claws scraping against the pod's edge. You'll regret this. The KONN will not bow to your cowardice. And humanity? A delegate from the Xeran Alliance asked nervously. Varys turned to Sarah. Humanity's actions, while unorthodox, were deemed proportional to the threat. However, the Council requests transparency regarding your military capabilities moving forward. Sarah inclined her head, her expression measured. Humanity has always sought cooperation, not conflict. We will share what is necessary to rebuild trust, but let this be clear, our patience should never be mistaken for weakness again. As the session ended, Sarah walked through the station's corridors, her communicator buzzing. It was General Kane. The KONN are retreating from all contested territories, he said. They won't challenge us again for a long time. Good, Sarah replied. But they won't be the last. Agreed, Kane said. We've set a precedent. The galaxy knows what we're capable of now. As Sarah looked out at the stars, she felt a mix of pride and foreboding. Humanity had proven its strength, but in doing so, it had drawn a line in the cosmic sand. Allies would come, but so would enemies. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. Now they would never forget. And for humanity, the stars held both promise and peril. A new era had begun, one where peace would be earned not through submission, but through unwavering strength and unrelenting resolve.